The executive boardroom of Hayes Global Industries gleamed beneath the cold brilliance of ceiling lights, its polished marble floor so pristine that even the faintest footprint vanished within seconds, a place built to remind the world who owned power, who commanded silence. It was 11:47 p.m., the hour when ordinary men returned home, kissed their children goodnight, and let exhaustion take them, but Elias Carter, a 35-year-old widowed janitor with weathered hands and steel-gray eyes dulled by battles life never apologized for, was just beginning his last floor of the night. Dressed in his faded navy uniform and pushing his silent cleaning cart across the glass-paneled hallway, he expected nothing but what every night offered: loneliness, the smell of disinfectant, and a company so wealthy that men like him existed as shadows within it. But tonight was different. Tonight, the CEO herself was still here. Aurora Hayes, 28, the youngest and most unstoppable CEO in the company's history, stood at the head of the long obsidian conference table, phone to her ear, posture sharp enough to cut steel. Everyone in the building feared her, admired her, or wanted to be her. Elias? He avoided her. He always had. She didn't belong to his world, and he had no intention of forcing himself into hers. Yet fate didn't ask his permission. Her voice, cold yet trembling beneath the surface, suddenly cut through the silence. I said no press coverage. If this leaks, she stopped, swallowing her panic, her pacing faltering. She wasn't negotiating, she was begging. Elias paused, broom halfway through motion, head slightly turned, though his eyes remained respectfully down. He told himself to keep working. Not his business. Not his world. Yet her next words crashed through him like a blade. Please, don't let them take my sister. Her voice cracked, not like a CEO, but like a terrified woman. At that exact moment, her phone slipped from her trembling grip, hitting the glossy black table with a sound so sharp it echoed. It slid across the surface, stopping right beside Elias's hand. Time seemed to hold its breath. Aurora's eyes shot toward him. For a heartbeat, she looked human, not untouchable. Elias didn't move. It wasn't his place. He had returned lost phones, wallets, gold watches, even a senator's envelope before, but this one felt different. It called him, then the phone vibrated again, a single notification flashed across the screen, for less than a second, but Elias saw it. Pay before midnight, or she dies. And in that single, forbidden moment, the janitor who lived silently in the background was pulled violently into the one secret he should have never witnessed. Elias's fingers hovered just inches above the CEO's fallen phone, his breath trapped somewhere between instinct and violation as Aurora Hayes, the woman who commanded boardrooms worth billions, stood frozen a few steps away, as though any sudden motion might shatter what little control she had left. Her polished composure had vanished. She was pale. Trembling. And that single flash of the screen, pay before midnight, or she dies, echoed violently in Elias's bones. He had no right to intervene. He reminded himself he was just a janitor, paid to mop floors, not entangle himself in the crisis of the most powerful woman in the company. Yet every fiber of his being screamed that whoever sent that message wasn't negotiating, they were promising execution. Aurora didn't order him to stop. She didn't shout. Her voice came out low and chillingly soft, don't. Not as a threat, but like a woman begging the universe not to open a door she could never close again. But the phone vibrated again. Before he could stop himself, Elias slammed his palm flat against it, not gently, with force, enough to make the table rattle. The screen woke, and an image exploded into full view, a dimly lit hospital room. Machines. Monitors. A frail teenage girl, unconscious, her skin ashen beneath a mask pumping oxygen. Elias's heart stuttered. Aurora took one step forward, lips parted, eyes shattering. That's my sister, she whispered. The image wasn't still, it was live. A shaky video feed. And then Elias saw it, what made his blood run cold. In the corner of the frame, taped beside the 4 stand, was a childish crayon drawing, a golden sunflower. Messy green stem. And the little heart drawn beside it, signed in tiny block letters, H. The same exact drawing his daughter Hope had made yesterday morning before school, the same style. The same imperfect curves. He knew because she had shown it to him while their second-hand toaster burned their breakfast again. "It's for the lonely lady in the hospital," she'd said. "She never has visitors, Daddy." Aurora stepped closer, realizing she wasn't just being watched, she was being hunted. "No one was supposed to know," she breathed, voice breaking. "Not the media. Not the board. No one. If this gets out, they'll remove me. They'll take everything." Elias didn't hear the second half. His pulse thundered in his ears. Hope had been there, at that hospital. With that dying girl, and if extortionists knew about Aurora, they could know about his daughter too. Elias lifted his head for the first time, locking eyes with the woman who'd never once noticed him before tonight. And in the kind of voice that came only from fathers who had lost too much, he asked the single question that would change both of their lives forever: "Where is she?" Aurora froze, not because she didn't understand the question, but because she did. Elias's voice wasn't laced with curiosity. It was laced with possession, the ironbound urgency of a father who'd already buried one half of his world once before and refused to even dream of a second. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Not CEO arguments. Not threats. Just fear, real fear, the kind that made her fists clench despite how hard she was trying to stay composed. "You don't need to," she began. Elias had already moved. He wasn't reckless. But he was decisive, like a man who had spent years suffocating in silence and finally found air. He grabbed his work jacket in a single motion and turned sharply toward the exit. His daughter's name slipped from his mouth like an oath to the universe. Hope. Aurora's heel snapped as she rushed forward, she didn't even realize she'd chased him. "Stop, you can't just," Elias turned, and for the first time since she'd met him, she finally saw his eyes not lowered, but alive. "My daughter was there. At that hospital. With your sister." Aurora's breath shattered. "How do you?" "Because she left that drawing." Silence hung heavy, the kind that shifts fate. Aurora's eyes darted back to the screen. That childish sunflower. That innocent heart. His daughter, a child, had walked right into a battlefield she never knew existed. The ruthless men behind that threat message weren't just targeting Aurora's sister, they were already monitoring the room. Anyone entering it now became leverage. Hope was leverage. Elias stepped toward the exit again, not even a flicker of hesitation left. Aurora blocked the doorway. "If you walk out of this room," she said quietly, "you won't reach her in time." Elias didn't blink. "Watch me." She exhaled, not angry, not superior, furious at fate itself. "There are men watching that room. Pay to make sure I pay. If they see movement, they might kill her." Elias's jaw clenched. His next words cut the air like cold steel. "Then you'd better walk with me." Those words, a challenge, a demand, a fact, silenced the storm in her. For the first time in her career, she didn't lead. She followed. They moved fast, down silent executive halls, past golden elevators, past layers of wealth that meant nothing now. Aurora kept pace with him, her mind a storm of calculations, but her heart doing something far more dangerous. Trusting him. Just before they reached the exit, she whispered, voice thin, "Ward 6. Room 608. Brookhaven Medical." Elias stopped only once, to look her in the eyes, and with a voice that carried a weight the world had never let him speak, he said, "No one touches my daughter." And in that moment, Aurora Hayes, the woman who had owned every boardroom she ever walked into, realized she had just stepped into a war with a man who feared nothing anymore. The ambulance bay of Brookhaven Medical blazed beneath harsh floodlights as Elias and Aurora burst through the sliding doors, one in a worn janitor's uniform, the other in a CEO's midnight black suit, but tonight, neither looked like what the world believed them to be. Elias didn't wait for permission. He didn't ask for where the nurses were or what the rules were, he moved like a father who was already certain death itself wouldn't get to his daughter before he did. Ward 6. Room 608, ***. His boots hit the linoleum like war drums. Aurora nearly had to run to match him. But when they reached the room, Elias froze. Hope stood inside, tiny, gentle, clutching her sketchbook, face to face with two men in black coats, not nurses. Not doctors. Extortionists, monitoring devices strapped under their sleeves. One stood near the hospital bed, Aurora's unconscious, dying sister. The other had already noticed Hope. And was reaching for her arm. The world went silent in Elias's mind. No logic. No hesitation. Just animal instinct, hope. His voice thundered so loud the walls could have cracked. Hope spun, eyes wide in relief. Daddy. The man's hand snapped back too late. Elias was already inside the room, grabbing the man by the collar and slamming him into the wall with enough force to rattle the machines. The second man moved, but Aurora stepped in like she'd been waiting her entire life to do this, not with fear, not as prey, but like a woman who finally chose war. Security is already on their way, she growled, holding her phone up, live-streaming the entire crime to her private legal task force, not police, the kind of people who erase criminals from society. The men froze. Because Aurora Hayes didn't bluff when it came to blood. When security stormed in seconds later, Elias didn't let go of the man until Hope was safely behind him, clutching his shirt like it was armor. The beeping heart monitor steadied. Aurora stepped toward her unconscious sister, then turned, watching Elias silently shield his daughter. Her voice trembled, not with fear this time, but something entirely new. Something unguarded. Elias, he turned, still on edge. Aurora swallowed hard, the woman who had never spoken a sentence without power suddenly sounding unsure. Please don't quit tomorrow. Elias blinked. Her next word stunned him more than the threat had. I don't want you mopping floors anymore. She took a breath. I want you beside me. Where people like you are finally heard. Elias didn't answer. Not yet. He just held his daughter, safe, alive. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe, because tonight, this hospital didn't just expose a crisis. It unmasked the invisible man the world ignored, and forced it to see the kind of power that doesn't wear a suit.